Okay, so today's webinar is an introduction to Ordo, Open Research Data Online, which is the OU's research data repository. I'm Isabel Chadwick. I am one of the research support librarians, and my colleague Yvette is here as well, who will be helping to monitor the chat and answer any questions as they come up, or to interrupt me if there's anything that she can't answer herself. And if you've got any technical difficulties, she'll be here to help you as well. So we've got about 45 minutes today. Hopefully we'll have some time for questions at the end. I'll try not to go too fast because I know that it can be a bit overwhelming when someone's showing you a new system if you're going too fast. So if I am going too fast, then please do pop in the chat that I need to slow down or go over something again. Okay. So before we start, I just want to flag up our website, which is at this URL on the bottom of the page. Our website has loads of really good guidance on research data management, including how to use Ordo and how to manage your data generally, as well as about open access publishing, bibliographics, research visibility, and all that kind of stuff. And also it's a place where you can find the recordings to all our previous trainings. So I'm in the process of uploading all of the ones we've done so far this year, and that can be found on our training page on this website. So please do go and have a look if you haven't been to our website before. So what are we going to cover today? First of all, I'm going to tell you a bit about what Ordo is, and who can use it, why you should use it, and then I'm going to give you a live demo of the system, show you how to navigate the repository, how to upload items, how to collect items, and also how to use it as a project workspace. But yeah, if you have questions as we're going along, please do feel free to pop them in the chat as they come up. When I'm doing the live demo, I won't be able to see the chat box. So if any questions come up while I'm doing the demo, please do interrupt me so that I can handle them while I'm on the relevant page. Okay. Right, so what is Ordo? Ordo stands for Open Research Data Online. It is the OU's research data repository, meaning it can be used to store, to archive, and to share your data or other underlying research materials. It's based on the Figshare platform, which some people might be aware of as a public repository. There is also a public-facing, a public version of Figshare, which anyone can upload to. But Ordo is the OU-specific version of Figshare, which is means that when you upload data to Ordo, it will go through a review process so that we make sure that the data is curated and preserved properly, which is different from the Figshare public version, where you can upload anything and it doesn't go through a curation process before it becomes public. To access Ordo, you can see the URL at the bottom of the screen, ordo.open.ac.uk, or just Google Ordo OU and it will come up as your first option. And it's available to all OU staff and research students, and it's also available to research support staff upon request. So research support staff don't get automatic access, but I know that a lot of academics like to delegate uploading to Ordo to their research support staff. So it is something that we can arrange for them to have access to the system. Okay, so it can be used in two ways. It's predominantly used to enable researchers to preserve and share their data and underlying research materials. However, you can also use Ordo to store your live research data and to collaborate with other researchers in a private shared space, known as a project space. So this would be during your projects when you've got some data that you need to share with colleagues either within the OU or outside of the OU. It does have the functionality to allow you to share data through Ordo with those colleagues before you make it public. So a bit like using SharePoint, although it's not got as many features as SharePoint in terms of collaborative working. So it's not always the most ideal solution, but it's a good workaround if you don't want to get other people OU usernames outside of the university, for example, or if there are any other restrictions on using systems like SharePoint, such as bandwidth in other countries or things like that. So I am going to demonstrate the project's function today, but it's important to recognise that there are limitations when you're using it in your Ordo in this way. So I'll discuss what those limitations are. It might be that it's a really good system for you, and there are some projects that really love using it in that way, and there's some that don't. So what are the benefits of using Ordo? So the benefits of using Ordo as an archive are that data will be kept for a minimum of 10 years. It meets most funder and OU requirements for data preservation. Ordo supports a wide range of file types and can be accessed anywhere. You can basically upload any file type to Ordo, and most common file types can be viewed in the browser without needing to download, and I'll show you some examples of how you can view items in the browser without downloading them in a moment. If there is a file type that you want to upload and that isn't working or won't visualize in the browser, but you would like it to visualize in the browser, please just get in touch with us and we'll see whether we can do anything about it. It's not impossible that we can do some developments on that side of things. Okay, so Ordo is secure. Data on Ordo is kept on multiple servers throughout Europe with daily backups and weekly system snapshots. It's easy to use. Most of you will already have access to the system without needing to request it. And prepared research, so by which I mean research which is in an appropriate format and has already got some relevant metadata assigned to it, that can be uploaded in under 5 minutes. And I'm going to demo how you do that in a moment. One of the really major benefits of using Ordo is that it allows you to publish your research data in a citable manner, whether it supports a publication or not, by giving you a data site DOI. So a DOI is a digital object identifier, which is a permanent stable URL. And you will get one of those for every output that you publish on Ordo. You can even create a metadata only record and link it out to data sets which are maintained elsewhere if you need a DOI for it. So if your data is stored in another location which doesn't have a DOI, but you need a DOI for your journal article, for example, you are able to link out from Ordo to the place where that research data is stored and gain a DOI for that record so that you can pop that into your journal article. Ordo allows you to meet funder expectations. However, please be aware that Ordo might not be the most appropriate repository for your data. So some funders, for example, the SRC or NERC, have got specific preferences or mandated repositories. Or there might be a more suitable subject repository that will make your data more discoverable if you use them rather than using Ordo. So try to look for a funder or discipline-specific repository if you can before opting to use Ordo. But Ordo is a really good option for all the reasons that I have mentioned. You're the best person to know what's best practice in your community for you. So there may be recognised repositories within your discipline, and if you need information about that, then feel free to get into contact with us, but possibly the best people to ask are your colleagues. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and do a live demo for you. So I'm going to stop sharing my slides and I'm going to start sharing my screen. So just bear with me for 2 minutes while I switch over. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen now. Yvette, can you confirm that you can definitely see it?
I can see it.
Fabulous, thank you. Let me just move that over there. Okay, so this is the Ordo homepage. As you can see, it's got the URL that I mentioned before, ordo.open.ac.uk. And as I scroll down, this is what you'll see. So all of the items that have been uploaded to Ordo are displayed by default in chronological order, with the most recent first. So the most recent was uploaded today, all the way down to the least recent. That doesn't sound quite right. So Ordo's been around since 2016, and it's growing in popularity. So we do have quite a lot of stuff on here now. I think I can probably tell you. Oh no, it tells us how many views and how many downloads we have. I can't remember off the top of my head how many items we have in here, but we do have a lot in here now. And there's a real range of stuff. So you'll be able to see that we've got some tabular data. We've also got PowerPoint presentations. We've got videos. We've got images. We've got posters, all sorts of materials that might underpin your research publications. And as you can see, if on this homepage, the item has got a thumbnail, that means that when you click into it, you will be able to visualize it in the browser, like so. And within the browser, you are able to zoom in, move it around, and manipulate it. And you can click between different files within the data set within this page. Okay, so I'm going to show you a couple of other examples. So here is a video that's been uploaded. This is the 3D reconstructed brain capillary fragment from a young female mouse. And if I press play, you'll be able to see that you can watch the video within the browser. And this is obviously a very short one. This is only 1 minute and 6, but you can upload videos of any length, really. I think the longest one we've got is about 2 hours. So there's no limit. Well, there is a limit on the size of file that you can upload, but I think it's something like 10 gigabytes, which is pretty hard to exceed. So for most people, that will be plenty. Okay, so I'm going to talk you through some of the elements on the item page. So as you can see here, we have got the title of the item. We've got a cite button, which gives you the DOI for the item, and it also gives you a citation that you can use in your publications, for example, or for someone else to be able to cite your data. And you've got the option to change the citation style. Citing data is relatively new, and actually this is really useful because many people don't know how to cite data yet, because it's not something that we've been doing in research for a long time. Then you've got a download button, which allows you to download the item. So you can both view it in the browser, as we've already done, or you can download it and keep it on your laptop. We've got a share button, which allows you to share it directly to social media, LinkedIn, or by email. And we've got an embed button, which could be useful if you wanted to embed this video, for example, onto your blog or onto another informal publication. That's a really useful function. And then there's also this collect button, which I'll talk a bit about in a moment. It's a way of adding items to a bigger collection so that you can show a wider body of work made up of various items on Ordo. But I will talk about that a bit more in a moment. Okay, so if we scroll down, actually I'm going to click out of that. If we scroll down, you'll see it tells you what kind of item it is. This is media. Media just means any video or audio file. We can see who the author is. You can put multiple authors into here. You can actually click through into that author and see their profile. Some people have got more information on here than others. Eduardo just has this one item on Ordo, but some people have got multiple items, and some people will have created a profile on here which talks a bit about their research and has a picture and all that kind of stuff. And what's nice here is if you do have a lot of stuff on Ordo, then you can get all of the metrics from all of your items put together, which is quite a nice thing to see, and something that you might be able to use to show off how relevant your research is. Okay, so then we've got a description, and as you can see in this description, Eduardo has used some HTML editing to create a hyperlink. That's absolutely fine, you can do that, and if you need help with that, then please get in touch with us. We're happy to do that for you. He's entered the funding code, so this was a Horizon 2020 project, and then we can see the history of the item. So this is when he uploaded it and when it was published. So that was the 1st of July 2020. And here are some references, which are some related websites to the item. And then on the right, we can see the usage metrics for this item. So it's had 215 views and 87 downloads. Unfortunately, it doesn't have any citations yet. He's also added in the categories and the keywords. And here at the bottom, we have got a license. So Eduardo has put a CC BY license onto this. And so that's really useful for anyone who's looking at Ordo and looking at this data and thinking, how can I reuse this? They'll be able to understand from this license what they can do with it. And you can click on this and it will give you information about what that license means in case you're unaware of that Creative Commons licensing. Okay, so I'm going to show you another example, which is an example of an item which is under embargo. So some data will need to be under embargo for various reasons. It might be so that you can have priority use of the data before it's published in order to action a patent, for example, or so that you can complete your publications associated with that data. So this one is under an embargo for a further 3 years and 15 days. But again, you can see all of the metadata associated with this one. And as you can see, on this one, we've got one person who's in red and one person in grey. And that's because Alexandra is an Ordo user. She's the person who uploaded this data. So she has a profile, whereas Claudia is not an Ordo user. She is a co-author that Alexandra has added manually. And I'll show you how to do that in a minute. Also, on the right on this one, you can see that there's this box that says read the peer-reviewed publication. And if I click on that, it will take us straight to, hopefully, if it's going to load up, the journal article which is associated with that data. So that's really nice. And what Alexandra has hopefully done, I'm not going to try and find it, is added in the DOI from this data set into her publication as well, so it's got a two-way linkage. So that's really great. I don't think there's anything else that I need to show you from here. Perhaps that we've got the same research groupings as Ordo has as well, so you can add your own research group in here, but unfortunately at the moment you can't navigate by research group. And then finally, I'm going to show you a collection. As already mentioned, a collection is a way of grouping together various items on Ordo that sit under either under a theme or under a project. So in this case, Robin has created a collection to group together all of the items related to his project, Open Melody, a human AI collaborative music creativity tool. And so he's got loads of information about what the project is. He's got some links to his papers that are related to this project. There's only one author with this project, but you could put multiple authors in here. And then if we scroll down, you can see that there's a DOI for this collection. So this DOI relates to this one page, this page which is the collection, which encompasses these two items. So these two items have their own DOI, their own persistent links, but as well as that, the collection as a whole has its own DOI. People find this a really useful thing to do, not just for putting into publications, but also if you're going to a conference, for example, and you've got one place where you can showcase all of your materials that are related to a project. It's a really nice thing to be able to share with people, to pop onto your poster, for example, and say, look, I'm doing this project, here's all of my data or my underlying materials, please go ahead and have a look at it. It's a really nice showcase of the work that you're doing. So it's a really good thing to use. Okay, so when you want to go back from an item to the home page of Ordo, you just need to click on the Open University button, and then you will be back at the home page. Okay. Just briefly, if you want to search, there is a search box here, and you can also narrow it down by categories, groups, and there's also the search box here. I'm not going to talk too much about search because I think generally people, when they want to access something on Ordo, will be coming in through the DOI rather than using the search box, but it's useful to know that it's there just in case. Okay, so I'm going to show you the back end of Ordo now. So when you want to log in, just click on the login button, and I think that this, how annoying. Let me try again. We've got some problems with Ordo at the moment, and even though I'm in incognito mode already, it looks like it's not going to work for me. Right. Sorry guys, bear with me a minute. I thought we'd solved this. Okay, so you log in with your OU account, so that's your username at open.ac.uk and your normal password, and click sign in, and hopefully it will work this time. Hurrah! It's worked. And you should come straight to this back end. Now, if what happened to me just now happens to you, please could you, number one, tell us that it's happened, but number two, in order to resolve the problem immediately, if you go into incognito mode or private mode on your browser, it should immediately resolve the problem. For some reason, I had set it up so that I was already on my incognito mode and it hadn't logged in that time. And I've got no idea why it did that, but every single time I've done it before has always worked. It seems like we're coming to the end of the problem, and it should only be a matter of days before we're back to being able to log in normally. But if you are having problems, then please email us and we will help you. Now, there may be an issue where you're on the wrong IT list, and then we'll have to add you to it. So that's why I say if you're having problems, email us either way, just so that we can keep a log of what's happening and whether we need to help you further. Okay, so sorry. After that aside, so I clicked login, I put in my username, and I came to this page. So this is the back end of Ordo, and what you can see here is I'm currently on my data page, and this has got all of the items that I've uploaded. Now you'll see that I've got quite a lot of items that are called Untitled Item, and that's because I do a lot of demos of Ordo. But the ones that have got green dots next to them, which I don't have many of, are things that have been published. And if I could see one that had a green dot with white in the middle, it would be something that was in the review queue. And then this one that's got a grey dot here, that means that it has, I've sent a private link to someone. So people can see it, but it isn't published. And I'll show you how to do that in a minute. Okay, so those are all my items. And then to create a new item, super easy. You just click on create a new item, and it will take you to this page. Okay, so I'm going to briefly take you through how to upload an item. But first of all, before I do that, I'm going to show you this button, which says metadata record only, which allows you to create a record rather than to upload an item. And if you want to do this, you need to have a valid reason for doing so. So a reason for doing this would be that your research data is far too big for you to be able to upload it to Ordo, but you want to provide access to people to your server on request. So you are able to create a metadata record only, which tells people what the data is and the terms of access. There's another button here which says link file, and this allows you to add in a URL to another location where your research data might be stored, so that people can access it through Ordo, and you'll get a DOI for it, as I mentioned before, which you'll be able to pop into your publications, for example. Okay, but generally most people, when they're using Ordo, will be uploading items. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to click Browse. And I've been doing some very important research on the quality of supermarket Christmas sandwiches. So I'm going to upload my item, which I've uploaded there. It's an Excel file. I'm going to give it a title, Sandwich Analysis Christmas 2021. Now, in terms of authors, I'm an author. I'm going to add my colleague Yvette, who is already using Ordo. So I can add her and she'll turn up in green because she's already an author. But if I wanted to, she's already got a login on Ordo, I want to say. But if I want to add somebody who doesn't already have Ordo access or Figshare access, then if I type in their name, there's no results found. So I'm going to add author details. I need to add his email address, and you can add their ORCID as well, and you can save details. Okay, so you'll see that the people who already have Figshare or Ordo accounts are in green, and the added authors are in grey, and that matches to what I showed you on that item earlier, where one of the authors had an Ordo account and the other person didn't. Okay, in terms of categories, you can search this, but it is a list. Okay, group. I think that I'm doing this sandwich analysis within STEM. So your group is your faculty. Item type, this is a data set. You could choose figure, media, poster. In terms of journal contribution and thesis and preprint and book, these are things that would really go onto Ordo rather than onto Ordo. So you wouldn't ever tend to use these on Ordo. If you're not sure about whether the thing that you want to upload is supposed to go onto Ordo or Ordo, then email our team and we'll have a look and decide which place is the best place for it. We do have a collections policy, but we're aware that there are some reasons why things which would traditionally go onto Ordo might fit better on Ordo. So if you want to put it here but you're not sure, send us a message and we'll have a discussion about it. So I'm going to choose dataset for this one. Okay, and then I'm going to add some keywords. And a description. In this section, it's really important to add more context than I just have. So as much context as you possibly can. So talk about what the project is, what the data that you've uploaded is, if possible, add a list of what all the files that you've uploaded are, because you can upload multiple files, one collection. If you've got loads of a really, really big description, it might be best to upload it as a README file rather than pop it in the description, but either place is fine. And as we saw earlier, you can put HTML into this area so that you can put hyperlinks and stuff in here. So if you need any help with that, then please do let me know. And you'll notice that actually here on the right, it does give you some tips about how to use all of these different sections. Now, funding, you can put in your grant name or number, and you can add multiple grants. Okay. In resource title and resource DOI, if you remember earlier, we saw the link to the peer-reviewed publication. This is where you would put this in. So this is if you have a journal article with a DOI that you can attach to this to this item. So in resource title, you put the title of the journal article, and resource DOI, you put in the DOI, and then when it's published, you'll get that lovely little box on the right hand side that says review the see the peer-reviewed publication, or whatever it says. I can't remember what it says, something like that. Visit the peer-reviewed publication, and then people will be able to click through and go straight to the journal article that's associated with this. Whereas if you have other items that aren't necessarily journal articles, they might be websites, they might be other data sets, they might be your item on Oro, for example, you can pop that into references. And so if you're uploading your thesis data, for example, if you're a postgraduate research student, it's in references that you would tend to put the link to Oro so that people can jump between the two of them. And then license, we tend to recommend that you choose one of the Creative Commons licenses, and actually CC BY is generally the best one for research data. I'm not going to go into much detail about why that is now, because we do another session about data sharing in which I talk about it. But if in doubt, that's the one that I would choose. If really in doubt, then please get in touch with me and I'll talk you through it. And research group, as I mentioned before, aligns with the list on Oro. I'm not sure which one I would choose on this, so I'm not going to choose anything. Now at the bottom, you can see there are 3 options here. So apply embargo, which we saw. You can select a period of 1 month, 4 months, or until a specific date, or you can select permanent embargo. And permanent embargo means that the files will be private forever, but they will still be preserved and looked after by the research support team in the library. So even if the thing that you want to upload can't be made public, still upload it, because you can keep it permanently embargoed, so it'll be safe and sound and looked after for a minimum of 10 years. And you can choose whether the embargo is on the files only or on the entire content. And actually we have disabled this, so you can't choose. Sorry, I forgot that we disabled this option. So it can only be on the files only, which means that the metadata associated with those files will always be public. Okay, but I'm not going to do this. How do I unselect that? I don't know how to unselect it. Disable. Okay. Generate private link. This is, for example, if you are going through peer review and you want to share your research data with your reviewers before you make it public, you can copy this link and send it to them so that they are able to view the data in a private space before it's on the public repository. Please do not use this link in papers. Use the public DOI, because this link is not a persistent link and it is not a reliable link. You must publish your data and use the DOI in your papers. Okay. And then finally, there's this option to reserve a DOI. So reserving a digital object, or reserving a digital object identifier is really useful if you are in the process of writing or publishing and your data isn't quite ready to go public, but you need the DOI to put onto your journal article, or to provide to your publisher so that they can pop it into their information. Because a lot of publishers nowadays are requiring you to upload your research data and make it available alongside the publications. So this allows you to have the DOI before the data is published, so that you can add it into your publications at an earlier date. Now, when you've added all of this information, you click this publish button and then you click publish item. And what will happen then is the item will come to my team and we will have a look at it and decide whether it's okay to go onto the public repository. So what we're looking at there is whether we can download and use the files properly, whether the metadata that you've added, so the description of the files, is accurate, and whether it's sufficient for people to understand what the data is, and whether there is any personal information on the files that you've uploaded, or any other information that we think shouldn't be put into the public domain for legal or ethical or commercial reasons. Okay, but I'm not going to publish this because Okay, so I'm going to navigate from there and click on projects first. Now, project is the area. I'm aware I don't have very much time, so I'm not going to go into a massive amount of detail on this. This is the area where if you are working with collaborators either within the OU or outside the OU, you are able to share items with them. So, for example, this project is one that I have with my colleague Maxine, and we've got a couple of items in here that we're sharing between us. So it's basically a bit like using Dropbox. It's a way to share items privately, not publicly. I'm not going to talk any more about that because we don't have a lot of time. But if you are interested in using Ordo in this way, then please do get in touch with me and I'll talk you through it. And then next up we have collections. So we saw an example of a collection earlier where somebody had a project with multiple files associated with it, and they used the collection to describe what the project was and link out to those files that were associated with it. And we saw that there was a DOI that linked together all of those items so that you could have one DOI for a group of Ordo items, basically. Now, creating a collection is really super easy as well. You just need to click on create a new collection and you need to add in all of this information, which is pretty similar to the information that you need to create an item on Ordo. I'm not going to do this now because I'm aware of the time, but it is very, very similar. The only thing to be aware of is that your description needs to be different, because in this case you will probably be describing, for example, a project or an event rather than an individual data item. So think about what links all of this stuff together and why it is that you need the collection. Now, collections can be private or they can be public. So, for example, this is a private collection. This is one that I just have for myself. And if I click on manage, you can see that there's a publish collection button here. Now, I can only make the collection public if all of the items that I have in my collection are already public, which in this case, they aren't. So the reason to have a private collection, and the way that I'm using this one, is so that I can keep account of the data that I'm uploading for a specific purpose. So I uploaded all of these items and I want to be able to keep track of what I've uploaded within this specific category. Now, I don't think I've got I have got a public collection. Here we go. So this is an example of a public collection. So you'll see here it's got the green dot, which means it's published. And I've got 3 items in here. And here I've got my details about the collection, which are publicly available. And again, I can manage this. So if I add more items to it, I can generate a version. So if there are any modifications to the collection, I can generate a new version of it. So a collection can be something that you add to over time. And that's what a lot of people do. So if they've got a longitudinal study, they will be adding items to it over time rather than doing it all at once. Okay, I think I'm going to stop there because I'm aware it's a lot of information and we've only got 5 minutes. So if anyone has any questions, then we've got 5 minutes to take some questions. So I'm going to stop sharing and go back to Adobe Connect and see if there's any questions here.
There's one question for you, Isabel.
Yeah. Have a look. Very specific questions, so I'm happy to email separately. I'm going to upload interview transcripts for my thesis. Do I also upload the consent forms to Ordo, but separately with an embargo? Okay, so what I would do is you don't need to upload the consent forms that your participants have signed. In fact, you probably shouldn't upload the consent forms that your participants have signed. Those need to be kept completely confidential. You could upload the uncompleted consent form, so the template for the consent form, if you think it would be useful for people to be able to see it, but really it's not completely necessary to do so, as long as you are sure that you've got consent to upload those items to Ordo. It doesn't matter whether you upload the consent forms as well. And that's fabulous that you're using it so you can put a link into your thesis for the interview data. Examiners will not need a login for Ordo to access them, because anything that you publish on Ordo is in the public domain. So they do not need a login. Anyone can access anything that's been published on Ordo. The data will be available to a minimum of 10 years. Yeah, so this is a good question. So the reason why we say a minimum of 10 years is because the OU's policy and a funder policy is that research data should be kept for a minimum of 10 years after the project is finished. Now, we have a system in place which has not happened yet because the repository's only been up and running for 5 years, that after 10 years we will review those items and see whether they ought to be kept or ought to be destroyed. Now, we've never actually gone through that process, and the thing to consider here is that actually destroying the data and removing it from Ordo is more expensive than keeping it on Ordo because of the people hours involved in doing that. So in many cases, the data will be kept for longer than 10 years, not for 10 years. But if it needed to be deleted after 10 years, that's what we would do. I hope that answers the question. What's the maximum file size that can be uploaded? I regularly work with data sites that are, whew, that's very big. I'm not sure what the maximum file size is. I think it's about 10 gigabytes per file. You only get assigned, is it, I can't remember what the standard amount that you get uploaded, that you get assigned when you first come on is. I think it might only be 500 megabytes when you, as your default, but you can request more storage. Now, when you go onto your login, you'll see at the top of the page there's a button that says request storage. If you click on there, you can say how much storage you need, and then it will come through to us and we will approve it for you. At the moment, we're not putting a limit on how much people can ask for because we have plenty of storage, but in the future that might change. In terms of uploading one file that was 500 gigabytes, the only thing that I would worry about if you actually do have one file that's 500 gigabytes is the amount of time that would take. But there is a desktop uploader that you can use, which, if it would be of interest to you, I can send the details of. It's quite a specific thing that most people won't need to use because using the browser uploader is good enough for most people. But if you have massive data sets, there is a different version that you can use in order to upload them. So please, could you get in touch with me separately if you want to upload your enormous data sets, and we'll have a look at how we can do it. I hope that answers your question. Okay, unanonymized research data. Has the project finished would be my first question. If the project hasn't finished, then you would be keeping it in SharePoint or similar. Yeah, if the project has finished, I would question why you're holding on to that anonymized research data. And if you really do need to hold on to it, you can upload it to Ordo under a permanent embargo in order for it to be preserved. But again, this is one that I would probably ask you to run by me before you did it. Okay, yeah, you can upload them under permanent embargo. So yeah, that's fine. I'm just going to share with you our feedback link. Okay, so, oh, I haven't updated this. In fact, do you have the current feedback link? If you don't worry, I'll pop it into the email when I send around the slides and the recording.
I'll see if I can find it and pop it in the chat. Just hang on.
Okay, thank you. Are there any more questions? I can see that someone's typing. If there aren't any more questions, then thank you for coming, everyone, and I will send around the recording and the slides later. And I'll also send around the feedback form for this year so that you can let us know what was good and what was bad about this session. I hope it was useful. It seems like a bit of a whirlwind to me because there's so much to show you, but hopefully it's given you a good overview of how to use Ordo and what it's for. Yeah, Yvette's put the feedback link in there. That's brilliant. Thank you, Yvette. If anyone has any questions, then I'm happy to stick around for 15 minutes. If not, then thank you all for coming, and hopefully see you at one of our sessions in the new year. Have a brilliant Christmas and a lovely break.